everybody. I'm just gonna put this out here now. I'm kind of talking a little quiet just because I have 3 children who are finally all asleep. So I did my video on the Franklin Delano Roosevelt speech. The speech that's actually known as the attack on Pearl Harbor. I believe this is actually one of the most profound speeches known to man, and it will be one of the most famous speeches that will forever stay in America's history. One of the biggest things that I found that were within an hour of the speech, Congress passed the formal decision to go to war against Japan. So during this time, Japan not only attacked Pearl Harbor, they attacked Malaya, Hong Kong, Guam, Philippine Islands, the Wake Islands, Midway Islands. This was, as quoted, a sudden and deliberate attack. This is not something that was not planned. This is something that was deliberate and meant to hurt us. They took a full advantage of the entire Pacific coast by the time they got to Pearl Harbor. It was a sudden and deliberate advance through the entire Pacific coast. I believe that this entire speech was absolutely delivered in the best way that it possibly could. A lot of Roosevelt's colleagues and the vice president and people that worked for him wanted him to go into more depth about certain things and, explain more about like Germany and explain a lot of different aspects of the war and why they needed to go to war. And I believe that Roosevelt's way of doing it, just very short, to the point, and bringing up the fact that America was the victim and that they needed a united nation to be able to come together as one to deliberately go back at the Japanese. This was the turning point which brought us into World War II. The speech didn't last any longer than 7 minutes is what it had said when I did the extended research on it. So it was a pretty short speech. At the same time, this speech will forever be remembered in our history books. I still remember hearing all about it as a kid. Again, Roosevelt chose to put the foreground of the object being acted upon, which was America being the victim in all of this. Japan suddenly and deliberately attacked the United States of America. Due to this, he needed to go back on this, and we needed to deliberately attack them. It was also quoted later on by the commander of the Japanese that they didn't bring in the 3rd wave. There were supposed to be 3 waves in Pearl Harbor, so the first wave came in and struck first, and the second wave of Japanese pilots came in and annihilated pretty much the rest of Pearl Harbor. And finally we got to the point that the 3rd wave was supposed to come in, and it never did because the Japanese had figured out they were afraid they woke the sleeping giant being the United States of America, that we could come back and get them. And they knew we were absolutely capable of it. hence Roosevelt's speech, the attack of Pearl Harbor, and how this sudden and deliberate attack absolutely came back on the Japanese in the end, because the United States had gone after them, and we ended up winning in the very end of this. Woodrow Wilson had gone into great detail about how Germany had posed a strategic threat, and a lot of idealism. Roosevelt's technique was straight and to the point. The big thing that he had, instead of going for the idealism perspective, where, this is a just war, there's a real reason why we're going to war, we need to go to war, we need to do this, we need to do that. Okay, that's not what ended up happening. Roosevelt went the other way and did the Patriotism Act versus idealism. He brought the nation together. Over 81% of all the American households during the time of that 7-minute speech were actually recorded listening to this speech. That is huge compared to today's time frame, where I'm sure most people don't watch this whatsoever. And it was so profound at the end. And this is where I believe, again, his speech wouldn't have been as effective had he done it another way. He went and brought, as a nation, he brought everybody together to be able to agree as one, not dictating, Democrats versus Republicans, or, one side versus the other. This was, no, we're looking as a whole. If we're going to defeat Japan, we're going to do it as a nation. We're not going to do it as the Democratic side. We're not going to do it as a Republican side. We're going to do it as one, as a unison. So honestly, this is one of the greatest speeches of all time, and I don't think there could ever be another one like